Helsa. Recently, I had did a video in which I had spoken about the 14 codes of Aryan ethics. And before I begin, it seems that this has become a ritual of mine on my night videos to raise a PBR to all my brothers and sisters who try to uphold the wokeness or Odinist values and what we stand for, and who stumble and fall but still pick themselves up and try to walk that path the best they can walk at. To you, brothers and sisters, Hellside. Hopefully, I won't be called a drunk because I raised a beer, but I work 13 hours, 14 hours a day, and this is for all my brothers and sisters who will do the same. I mentioned the 14 codes of Aryan ethics, and I mentioned where they could be found at. Hopefully, brothers and sisters went and looked it up. But the first of the 14 codes is honor no gods but those of your own folk, for alien gods and creeds will destroy you. Since the beginning of our existence, the white race, since the beginning of our existence, our ancestors have always believed in a higher power. Um, Gods, goddesses, Wotan, Thor, Balder, Frey, Tyr, the female goddesses, Idun, Freya, Frigga. They've always believed in the higher power of these gods and goddesses. Some of our ancestors believed that the gods and goddesses were literal. They were literal beings. Some of our ancestors believed that the gods and goddesses were archetypes. They were the highest evolution of man and woman. Um, Regardless of what belief or what their outlook was on the gods and goddesses, the one thing or the one common denominator that brought all this together was the fact that they did believe. And not only did they believe, but their whole way of life was surrounded by these concepts, these beliefs. If you were a fisherman, there was a group of gods that you prayed to. If you were a farmer, there was gods or goddesses that you prayed to. If you was a man and you wanted to have children with a woman, um, there was a god that you prayed to. Same thing with the females. They had a goddess that they would pray to. And our ancestors believed in these gods and goddesses so much that it really encompassed every aspect of their life, to the naming of the child, um, to building of temples, to when you built a sword, you dedicated the sword to a particular god. You put the god's rune on it. Uh, when you built boats, they would put runes on the boats. Built houses within the house frame. Excuse me. There would be runes within the wood structure. So we know that they held a deep belief. And one of the things that is fascinating, just like even today, is the fact that there's really two groups of people who hold concepts when it comes to the gods and goddesses. There's one group that they believe in the gods, they perform their bloats, they do other ritualistic things. And then there's another group who they take the gods and the goddesses and they apply it to the evolution of man. They apply it to the higher consciousness of man. And regardless of which way you take it, it still serves its purpose. The gods and goddesses are still educating, they're still teaching our people. And our ancestors handed us a knowledge that, if used, could put man or woman at the highest peak. It could put man or woman to the top of the evolving chain. And once we begin to apply this knowledge, once we again begin to apply the deep-rooted knowledge that our ancestors gave us, and a part of that has to do with reflecting on the spirituality that our ancestors had, and taking that and making it our own, and not only making it our own, but adding to it. Because we understand that the Nordic gods are a part of our bloodline. They are within our DNA. This is why our gods and goddesses can never die. As long as our race exists, our gods and goddesses will exist. The knowledge will continue to be presented. But when we take on the aspects or the belief of foreign religions and foreign gods, we see that the Aryan man begins to change. He is no longer fighting for the preservation of his bloodline. He is now fighting a war that has everything to do with the religion that he has taken upon. And a prime example are all these so-called white men who are following Eastern religions. These religions have nothing to do with Nordic people. These foreign gods have nothing to do with the Nordic race. This is one of the reasons why these religions came out of the East and went into the European countries, went into the European lands, and put the heathens to the sword, or forced them to convert to their way of life by the pains of death. And when we look at this, we look at what has happened to our race since the following or the acceptance of these foreign gods. We can see that history has proven that our race has become weaker. Our mindset has began to be destroyed. And the reason for this is because it is in our DNA to have those aspects that made our race great at one time. We were warriors. And the reason why we were warriors, the reason why, if you wasn't a warrior, so to speak, on the battlefield, you still played your part, because you understood that each god had a role. Not every god was a warrior. So everybody within the tribe played a major role. But when we started following or accepting foreign religions, our mindset began to change. We began to become weaker. We began to become weaker as a people. So much so that we no longer abide by the laws of nature. Homosexuality has now been introduced into our way of life. We now accept everyone. We now look and acknowledge the miscegenation of other races. We now look and accept people to rule over us who were unfit to rule over us. And all of this came from turning our backs on our gods and goddesses. Once we did that, once we severed the connection to our gods and goddesses, we severed that chain or that mindset that comes with the worshiping of our gods and our goddesses. And the only way that we as a race can ever get back to that mindset that we had is if we first acknowledge the first of the 14 codes of Aryan ethics, and that's honor no gods but those of your own folk, because our gods is a mindset that made us into one of the most greatest races there is. But now look at us. We now fall upon our knees and we beg a foreign God for forgiveness for sins that we have committed. We now accept other races, inferior races, as our brothers, as our sisters. This was not the mindset of those who followed the gods and the goddesses before us. This was not the mindset of the original followers of the Nordic gods. This is the mindset of a foreign religion that not only brought a foreign god, but it brought a mindset to us that is completely foreign to us, and it is destroying us as a race. So let us turn back to our gods and goddesses. Let us look for them to guide us to that evolutionary stage, because once the man and the woman begin to change their mindset, once they begin to accept that evolutionary stage, then we have the capability to evolve our race and bring our race back to its beginning, back to its glory days. With that, hope I didn't bore you. My fire's going kind of dim, as you can tell. Once again, Helsa to all my brothers and sisters who follow the Nordic gods and who are trying to evolve and to become that most enlightened individual in which will save our race. Hopefully. Okay, maybe doubtful, but at least we try. Helsa.